Economic Development Committee, July 6th. I'm John Weddleton.
Pete Peterson.
Christopher Constant.
Forrest Dunbar.
Felix Rivera.
Mandy Honest, Clerk's Office. I'm Sharon Ferguson, Planning Department.
Chuck, go around Dave.
Dave Whitfield, Planning Department.
I'm David Schimmick, owner at 3307 Spinner.
Sandra Brown, Floodbury Partner.
Elijah Gutton, Library Partner. Kerry Kerrigan, West Marijuana Industry Association.
Sonic Calhoun, Planning.
Brian Young, Planning.
All right, thank you. So, got the agenda in front of us, and Forrest, you wanted to make a change.
Yeah, I was hoping we could take up item B first, because that's a sort of broader policy question I'd like to discuss. 2B.
Oh, not to be?
Yeah, exactly. And, just because Dick and I have to
Any,
Maybe we have to run too.
Is that okay? Always for people with petitioners or applicants for the marijuana, if you haven't been to these before, what we'll do, we're going to change the order and just talk about B first. If that's okay. It shouldn't take too long. And then when we get to you, what we've done is invited the people, like the three of you, can sit up front here when we get to that topic. And we'll kind of run it. If you want to speak, just wave your hand and we'll get to you. Work our way around. So usually it's assembly members will kind of discuss it. And if we have questions, we'll reach out and you guys can speak. So you have a chance to talk, sit here. And then when we go on to the next case, we'll have those people sit up here and work it that way.
Roger that.
Thanks. And actually, if on this other one you have something to say, you can wave to it. Okay, so Chris, you want to lead the discussion on this one?
As folks might recall, at our last meeting, there was some heat and light about what's to be done about the downtown marijuana concerns, and there were 3 items that, in my opinion, will be addressed in a plan that comes up from the neighborhood that is in development. Those 3 issues are specific to a number of stores in the downtown, setbacks between the different stores, kind of distances, separation distances, and also the public use issue. And so the one area that we don't have any control over at this time is the public use issue. And the Marijuana Control Board, AMCO, is meeting today, tomorrow, and the next day and tomorrow. Excuse me, next week, I'm sorry. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And the Wednesday of next week, they're taking up the issue of public consumption. And so I want to send them a message that, at least in the downtown, we have an issue. If you spend any time downtown and you go on the coastal trail, there's a little place called Hannah Cove. If you know Hannah Cove. When you drop down Elderberry Park, cross into the train tracks on the right, there's a little sculpture of a child.
Oh, yeah, well, I was walking by there just a little while ago.
In the woods behind there
It was
is
a bunch of smoking weed.
public consumption location for the downtown, for tourists. And so, and various other parks, but that's a pretty high concentration area. And we have a disconnection in our system that we tell people who are visitors, you can buy this stuff, but there's no place for you legally to use it. And so this is just a message to the Marijuana Control Board that we would like some tools.
Sort of created a catch-22 is what you're saying.
Yes, there's an irrational break in our system right now.
Can you explain, Chris, why there's like a amendment here? Is this something you've done before?
No. So what happened was this came up after our meeting last week, and there was high pressure to get the item onto the regular agenda because of the holiday. There was a cutoff time that was earlier than usual, and I didn't have time to fully think it through. And so the 2 items that you see added were items added after the item was submitted to the regular agenda. And the 2 items just add a little more to the whereas that citizens and business owners of the downtown are seeking additional regulation related to the number of licenses, separated distances, and on-site consumption issues. And then the second one is that, and this was after a discussion with another member, that Proposition 2 directs that alcohol, marijuana will be regulated like alcohol. So basically it's just, again, a statement to the Marijuana Control Board that we would like some clarity on policy.
John, are you aware of our secondhand smoke ordinance, Chris?
Yes.
So how can you justify that with this?
You mentioned last week even that there is one smoking.
There is one smoking, yes, that conforms to it.
Right, and so this doesn't address the actual implementation, it's not an ordinance that creates, that talks about AMC section 8.35.300, right? It only says that is reserved for regulation. And so it is my belief that when we are cleared by the state to contemplate this, that we will include that restriction in there. And what I have said, I said it to you last week, is that the yoga studios in this town have air cleaning systems that can keep an airspace clean, so there's no reason why one of these businesses
I didn't know this studios have one like that.
I don't know, but they do. They
That's
spent
what that's right.
$250,000, worth of air ventilation. And so, this can be done. It has been done. It will be done. We'll require it. We're not going to change our smoke code for this.
Well,
So the
yes,
other-
we're not gonna change our anti-smoking code,
Or not
secondhand smoke.
secondhand smoke.
Well, I mean, the inclement, I'm sorry, Pete.
Let me just.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I haven't seen one of these, but I've heard that places in the lower 48 have got sort of open airs marijuana smoking establishments, where they have like a garden in back where it's open air, so the smoke just dissipates upwards. And I mean, obviously that wouldn't work probably here too well year round, but that is something that seems to be working in other communities.
Well, I think it would work. I think it would work year round. You just have heating lamps and that kind of thing. So I said there's two thoughts on this. One is it's not just our city secondhand smoke ordinance. I mean, right now there is a pretty strong push to make it statewide and have a state law that bans it. And so it'd be interesting to see how that will interplay with this potential regulation. So beyond that smoking establishment, it's like a cigar shop or something,
It's
right?
a tobacco shop. It's
Right.
It's
So
on-
at Bernie's Bungalow, unless it's changed in the last year, you can smoke hookah, but you have to do it outside, right? And so you smoke tobacco through a water pipe. I think that's essentially what a hookah is. And I wonder how that relates to our secondhand smoking ordinance. But yeah, I mean, in general, I am supportive of this idea. I have the same concern that Dick does about how it would relate to our secondhand smoking ordinance. But I mean, the problem you've identified is clear, and we've known about it for years.
Well, and again, we reserve the right to regulate it under AMC 8.35.300. This doesn't do that. This is just step one. And we're asking guidance from the Marijuana Control Board to let us tackle this problem. Hannah, that's all I can say.
John, can we ask, is there anyone in the audience that might be able to speak to what the MCO is likely to do and what those regulations would look like?
Janet?
Well, first to the state statute that might pass, there's a carve out for marijuana licensed facilities that have the on-site endorsement approved by the control board and then approved by the local government. So that's addressed in that no smoking bill that is kind of stalled out right now, but I assume it's going to pass here in the next session. But so right now, how the model would be that they're going to consider is it has to be a walled off separate area with a separate point of sale where you buy lower quantities than what's regularly allowed for the retail sales. And then you can consume it in there, and there's some debate about whether you can take the product that you bought in the consumption area with you. Right now there's a push to do that, but to repackage it in child-proof containers before it leaves the retail consumption area. So it's lower quantities, separate point of sale system, separate staff for just monitoring this area, and then totally different kinds of quantities that you can buy in the consumption area.
If I could add in, they're also having a discussion about making sure that the air quality in that section is sealed off from the rest and not ejected, that will be handled inside the smoke meters and such, so that there's no air that goes out.
Yeah, I can't remember the exact phrasing that is in there, but it's something that I'm going to say it wrong, but some kind of engineer has to stamp off on the ventilation system.
HVAC.
Yeah, I don't remember what it was called.
I'm just wondering, how do we ensure the employee's health is not damaged by being forced to work in an environment that has smoke?
Well, I mean, and that's the
And
argument.
that's the same thing we had at the secondhand
Right.
smoke ordinance.
And you can't, I'm not a scientist, but I feel like if you're working that retail consumption, unless you do that open air concept, I don't think you can really completely minimize that. I know casinos do it, but there's still some negative impact to their workers too.
I don't, sorry.
Chris?
Well, too, again, we figured it out with the tobacco store, so I'm sure we can make the same requirements. Or even stricter, I think that the value of one of these locations would make it worth it. But the question was asked what AMCO is planning to do. And there are 3 questions that they're reviewing, 3 proposals. One is a 2-year moratorium with no public consumption. One is allowing the consumption of edibles on site, and one is the allowing of smoking on site in a licensed retail facility. What they do is up to them. What I've heard from Erica McConnell, the director, is that they will pick one and then move forward with investigating how to implement those rules over the next several months. And so if they make it to that point, they'll opt into one of those options and begin the process. So it's not something that's just going to happen next Wednesday. It's something that will begin next Wednesday. And so that's what's before AMCO. Okay.
Yes, Chris, I mean, realistically, if someone buys an edible or one of those oils and they have a vaping thing, then they can consume out in public and no one would know, right? And so what percent of
Actually,
consumption
yeah.
is through,
John, we took care of that. You can't vape in the downtown square.
you're not allowed to, but, you can't vape. But you could walk down the street vaping and no one would really know, is that right? So what percent is smoking a joint, which you can see, and then all the other ways?
So we have an immature market, but once our market matures, 60% will be concentrates. So 60% will be that kind of vaping form, one way or another.
Very good.
That's good, Mr. Chairman, that's the direction it's going. I, through a friend, know a guy in the valley who opened up a vaping store, sold $600,000 worth of vaping devices last year. Yeah.
And that's nicotine.
Oh, it's strictly for nicotine, I'm sure.
China cheaper than that.
China?
Yeah, I'm checking that direct to you.
So, any more on this? What do you want to do? Do we?
I would love a recommendation to the body that this committee thinks is a good idea.
I have no problem recommending this to the Assembly for us to consider next Tuesday.
Second?
I'm a no vote on it. Sorry.
Second on it.
Further second, any smoke?
I'm not on the committee.
I'm also not on the committee.
We're my team.
Amy said no too, okay? That's any solace to you.
Well, let's just go forward and say we discussed it.
Okay, fair enough. Yep.
All right, thanks. Did you hear from them? An accident on the highway.
Let's hope not.
Okay, moving on. Next one is Cloudberry Partners. So if you could squeeze up, grab a chair. And let's start. Andy, you want to go through the licenses?
So Cloudberry Partners, their operating plan indicated compliance with all the licensing conditions. It's for a retail store. They didn't have any taxes, fees, or fines due by any of the affiliates or licensees. This one, there wasn't any recommended conditions to be added to the license.
All right, thanks. This was Sharon? Sharon?
Yes.
Oh, there you are. You want to go through it real quick?
Sure. Cloudberry Partners is seeking a permit for a marijuana retail sales establishment. They are located on Spenard Road. They are located in the B3 district. There is an existing 6,056 square foot building inside. The retail business will occupy 1,519 square feet of this building. The building is currently vacant, but had previously been occupied by a church and a daycare center. The business will operate from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. In addition to the retail business, a cultivation establishment is also planned to occupy a portion of the building. The applicant has presented to the Spenard Community Council. And then in terms of the conditions, they will have to provide, it's an old building along Spenard Road, and so they will have to provide a cost estimate to verify whether improvements shall be required under the bringing characteristics into compliance because it's an old building on the north side. And traffic department had some issues that they needed to work out. That's pretty much it.
Janet, was that a wave?
Oh, I'm sorry, to Mike.
Sorry.
Sorry.
Any comments from Senator? I have a couple. Could you just a little more depth? You want a cost estimate to check compliance for title, just so everybody can educate on how does that work?
Right, so they have to, depending on the cost of their improvements to it, they may have to spend and the value versus the value of the building, the site, they may have to bring certain characteristics of the site into compliance, such as they may have to do landscaping, they will probably have to do, we've discussed this with the applicant, and other things to bring the site into compliance.
And so the trigger is if you spend more than 50% of the value of the building,
In making
then it triggers up to X percent spent on, I forget the numbers.
It's 10%.
10%. So if you spend $400,000 fixing up the building, and that would probably trigger it. Then you have $40,000 worth of landscaping.
Yeah, site improvements, and maybe parking lot striping, putting a screen around the dumpster, those kind of items.
Okay. Good. And then the parking, my understanding is they had plenty. What was it? There was a turn radius or something. What was the issue there?
It's difficult, one, to reach the dumpster if you look at the site plan and the pages aren't numbered, but it's going to may be difficult for a trash truck to be able to make that turn to pick up the trash. And traffic had a few other items.
Why this comment? That's because you have the dumpster in front. You
Right.
could put it from the lot. I mean, there's nothing worse than a dumpster thing. Here's my building, I got a dumpster in front. You thought about putting it deeper in?
I haven't thought about it personally, but we're still open to everything. We're just trying to make sure that we've got the parking and that, the traffic engineers can make everything work. So, but yeah, I agree with you on that.
And if you put a frame about it, or the structure around it, basically that just frames your dumpster. It's still visible loud and clear from the road.
Yeah.
John on page 18 of 156. Says the Community Council decided not to take a vote on approval or disapproval. I thought Spenard was approving on it and disapproving. It was downtown that didn't take a vote on it.
Bernard as well.
Right.
Smart as well.
But they do an MOU.
Right.
Yeah.
But they don't do,
But they're doing the MOU all right.
and downtown doesn't do either. Is that correct?
I think there was a copy of the MOU in there something like that.
Any comments?
Here it is right here. MOU's on page 22 and 23.
Just on page 45, this is a design thing, and having experience on Spenard Road for many years, you kind of jazzing up the look of that very
Yeah,
plain building.
we're trying, yeah.
Super nice. And you got like a little alcove for the entryway.
Mhm.
That's a homeless sheep sleeping shelter, training. So be warned, whatever you do, there will be people spending the night there.
Yeah, we have a large orifice on the outside, so hopefully that will kind of keep it a little more open, so it's not such a, but yes, that is a problem.
Yeah. Just be careful. You might have to be gated at night or something. It's unfortunate. But it looks, I'm real familiar with that building. I looked at it to buy it many years ago. And it's so plain looking. Your design looks real good. Nice.
We hope to improve it.
Urban renewal, beautiful downtown Spenard.
Oh, yeah.
Full power supply, they've got all the power they need.
It's a retail operation, so it should be fine.
But they're planning cultivation future time, is that correct?
Yeah.
And so, how many square feet are you planning for cultivation?
I don't know, it says it on there. Just, we're really kind of jostling that around due to some different setback issues with some neighbors and stuff like that. We're kind of in on about third or fourth stage of planning, but it's to the tune of 2,500 and 3,000 square feet.
So you might need to upgrade the electric before you're able to.
At
do
that point, we would, yeah. And they said that there was up to 600 amps available, I think, which would be more than enough.
Bill?
Yeah, until they intend to apply for their special land use permit for cultivation, there's no requirement for them to come talk to us about that. So, just as noted, be forewarned, you'll need a letter from the serving utility about your electric service requirement at that time, so.
Okay, any other comments on this? What do you recommend?
Move approval.
Second.
Okay, any opposition? So we got 2 people, I guess not. Okay. So do you understand how we've been doing this? Have you gone to our assembly? So this will go to the assembly on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And when it comes up, we'll mention that you came to the committee, we discussed it, and the committee recommended approval, and then it'll go to vote. So it's not a certain thing.
You do need to be there, is what you're trying to
It's
say.
helpful to
I was just going to add that we will be notified.
Doesn't hurt.
Yes.
It's always a good way to
I
spend
never
it.
know, there are 11 people on the ballot.
Okay, thank you. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
All right, next up, True North.
So True North, their operating plan indicated compliance with all the licensing requirements. There wasn't any Texas fees or fines found due. I didn't list any recommended extra conditions on the license. However, on the diagram, there was an area that appeared to not have camera coverage. Is the IT area number 1. So I don't know if I missed it. Okay. I'm sure we have. Other than that, everything was good.
Okay. Yeah, this was Sonic.
Yep, William Stevens is applying for a special land use permit for marijuana retail sales establishment doing business as True North Cannabis. The retail facility will have approximately 1,200 square feet of licensed retail space. The establishment will be occupying an existing commercial building in the B2B district located on 4th Avenue between G and H streets. The location of the store in the B2B district does not require any on-site parking or other changes to the site. The plans provided do not show any major alterations to the building facade or structure that would make it dissimilar character, scale, or size when compared to surrounding structures. An existing marijuana facility, AK Fireweed, is located within the same block, approximately 118 feet east of this proposed facility. The facility meets the required separation distances from protected land uses. Therefore, the planning department recommends approval of special land use permit subject to the conditions as stated in the staff report. It should be noted that on the staff report, there's one error. The case number is listed as 2016-0079. That's a typo. It should read 2017-0079.
And on your cover.
It's on the front page of the staff analysis.
Do we have to fix that? Don't have to worry about that.
On the front sheet.
Titles and all that.
The front sheet inside, it's got 17.
Okay, thanks. Any comments from assembly members? And we didn't get you, when you came in after we introduced ourselves.
Yes, my name is Michael Ward.
Michael Ward. Have you seen this before?
Not for this. I also own the Pioneer Bar right next door.
Oh, okay. Hey, a couple of questions. You've got, it's a little unusual, I don't think we've seen this before, but you have 2 entrances. You have a front and a back. And looking at the front one, it looks like a very small entry area. It looks like it's only 5 feet by 5 feet roughly. And the back looks big enough, but the back looks like, it's hard to tell from the things here, but is there like, does it go up to the next road? There's a space in there?
There's a space in between. It's currently used for it'll be used for parking for employees for both True North and for the Pioneer Bar. The rear entrance is not going to be used for the public.
And I think actually most parking is going to just stay what it's been doing, is just Pioneer.
But you say not used for public, but you show it on your thing, if there's an ID area, so on.
So we switched that, and so if you
What
look at
page? I'm looking at page 76.
Yeah, and so we, changed that, and you can see that, and it still says controlled access area, because we say controlled access area because there's only gonna be shipments going in through the back. We're actually not doing a public entrance in the back. Because there were some concerns with the community council that it was dark, you know, in that back area, and they just didn't think it was a good idea, so we just you know, changed our plan, and so that's only gonna be for drop-offs. It's not gonna be a public entrance.
Is that, do you state that in here somewhere?
I'm not sure if we do.
I didn't catch that, because I wouldn't, did. So you don't want to go in here triggering something automatically to make sure it has to come back.
Yeah.
because of it being changed.
I mean, we don't have it as, yeah, I don't think we do state that anywhere. So I don't know if you see that. Yeah, I didn't see that anywhere. I don't think.
There's, in the text, it said, there was somewhere in the text, I didn't know the page, it kind of implied you had 2 entrances and so on, so that.
Well, that was our original plan, but then after we met with the community council, we went a couple times, and so that was just kind of comments that we took away to not do that back entrance for public use. So we could do a, you want us to do a little amendment to our operating plan or something? Is that good?
Yeah. Plan or make it conditional?
Either or. I think you could amend your plan, or we can make a condition that you not take access to that.
Public access. Yeah, whatever is easiest, what's the easiest way for you guys?
Maybe I would just amend conditions to add that condition.
Okay, so you're just gonna, she's gonna add a condition on the AR.
And I would say, my comment was not to say it's bad, I just wanted to.
Well, we told the community council we weren't gonna do that, so,
Yeah, Jan, I think that's probably a good approach.
Yeah.
Just add it as a condition.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So the back entry is basically for employees. Is there employee parking back there? Is that?
well,
is that-
there's no parking on this site required by the downtown code, so the parking down there has been historically used for the Pioneer employees, and I don't see that changing. But that's kind of up to the owners and how they want to do that. I mean, I think the Pioneer, I mean, you guys are used to parking back there, so I think it would be kind of rude to ask the employees to make them park elsewhere. It's kind of your call.
Andrew Halgro has a solution.
But,
They have no actual parking requirements, right? Downtown, so.
We do have a nice big lot right behind us, a time parking lot.
yeah, that's, hey,
How many points are we talking about as far as parking? Assuming how many would be added parking there?
for True North,
Yes, for the marijuana facility.
you're probably gonna, have 3 to 5
Yeah,
employees at a
probably.
time?
The most. You've got a big parking lot back there?
Well, big, so the diamond parking lot.
Diamond parking.
is back there.
Okay, good, that'll keep it business.
Yeah.
Okay, on page 13, and this isn't really, I think, reflect on our action here, but in your narrative on separation distances, it says in there, required to be at least 500 feet away from various things, including college or university. I think we deleted those, is that right? When we went through and talked about
Ryan,
them.
can you speak to that?
That's correct. I can't remember exactly when that was deleted. It was a few months back.
Well, yeah, this was written and submitted
Okay.
months and months
Okay,
ago.
well, that's fine. I just want to make sure you know.
Yeah.
But as you go forward and others, perhaps you'll be more.
Yeah.
Looking at your plan, looking at page 75, for example, so you have a rectangular lot, but looking at your layout for your store, there's kind of a notch here on the southeast corner. What is in there?
It's connected to another building, so those are all those split lots. So we did an overlay, if you look on page 25, I think it was, that had us do an overlay. So we overlaid it, what's in that?
It's a downtown barber shop. It's been there for, I don't know, 50 years or so. It's one of the last half addresses downtown at 735 and a half.
So weird. So So if you see that entry where it says controlled access area, and there's like a little Arctic entry, and then there's a door that goes into the retail shop, and then there's another door that goes into the barber shop.
So your controlled entry is that Arctic entry?
No, that's inside. The Arctic entry is just an Arctic entry, and then there's a door to the left. And once you open that door, then there will be an ID check station right there.
But it looks like on page 75, you're pointing to that Arctic entry as the controlled access ID area.
Well, yeah, just that door right there.
So just that
The
door, so
door
you
on the
have
left,
someone
yeah.
by that door.
You're gonna have somebody checking the door, the IDs as people walk into that door on the left.
I mean, it might work, you would know, but most of the applications we've seen, like, they have huge areas for people to come in, and then you get ID and you go into the security
Yeah,
area.
we're
You've
not
got this
doing
tiny
it.
space.
Yeah, we're not doing, and that's not gonna be a waiting space, because that's also the space where the barber shop uses to
Right.
enter. So this isn't that kind of model where it's like a medical model where people have a waiting area. So I'm pretty sure if you walk in a Fireweed, the ID check is right there, and then you walk in, and it's the store.
So there's someone right there and you walk in.
Right.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So are you planning to build a rather robust wall between yourself and the barber shop so that someone doesn't break into the barber shop so that they can break through the wall to get into your establishment?
There's already a wall there.
I mean,
And my plan for the front was to do something covering the entire door, so they wouldn't be able, if they broke through the main front door, they wouldn't be able to break through the main front door. So
I think what he's talking about is drilling through this wall.
I
that.
But that, that's kind of what I got. What I wanted to do, I want to do something that protected the whole front entry. That we're still in the progress of working on that, but I hadn't thought of that.
Can they come over the ceiling tiles? That happened to me.
We'll have to wear ninja uniform.
Well, this does have a mobile viewing security system, so they can always look at their phones right there and watch the security cameras. And, Mikey not only owns the patio, but he also owns this building, and he's an owner on the license, so he's going to be right there most of the time.
Okay. I guess that was my question. Anything else? Okay, we have a recommendation.
I'll recommend it.
I'll second it.
Any opposition?
Interested to see how many people have complained from the summer meeting. The last time you go down that?
You might, there were no comment complaints here on this one.
I mean, we've been active, I've personally been active with Damien at the Downtown Partnership, and we're working on a plan, as Chris kind of alluded to, and getting on some of their committees. So, I mean, I've been talking, I met with Bob months ago before he even came to you guys to try to kind of diffuse the situation. So, I don't know, I haven't heard anything from them on this specific application, so.
Okay, we're good. See you Tuesday.
Well, and I want to thank you for setting up the tour for us.
Oh, yeah.
The manufacturing facility last week, that was amazing.
How was it?
It was a good tour.
Was it
Fantastic,
good?
yeah.
Isn't that a crazy building?
Look at a Challenger, scientific kid, Dr. Chris was, he went great. He's
Yeah.
got all sorts of tubes and vials and everything.
Yeah, he's a really bright guy. It's amazing. And that whole building was just like an empty shell. They built out that entire thing. So all of that inside wasn't there.
Right.
So it's crazy. Crazy build out.
Okay, so we have, Ryan's going to give us pictures. This is a map demonstration. I think this is based on our discussion last time about how many operations will wear this to help us get a grip on where things are.
Yes, that's correct. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to address, we had two questions at the last committee meeting. One was regarding the mapping, and the second question was regarding any code enforcement actions that have been taken on these marijuana facilities, of which there have been none. There are no active cases, nor have there been any complaints due to code enforcement regarding any licensed marijuana facilities. So to start out with, I just wanted to make the committee aware of what tools we have available to them They're all publicly available, and this is the exact same place where when I pull my reports for you guys, this is where I'm pulling data from. So I put together this handy little how-to for you. The place that you can find this map is just right on muni.org. Scroll down and you're going to click on maps here. You can also find zoning maps, property appraisal maps, road clearing maps, all kinds of stuff right here. And depending upon what screen you're working on, the orientation of the tiles might be a little different, but you're going to click on marijuana establishments. And the first thing you get when you click on the map is the little disclaimer regarding protected land uses and exactly how that separation distance is measured. And then when you scroll down here, it does give you a hyperlink to AIM 150-2016 as amended, which is the guidance document for exactly how that first factor pedestrian route is to be measured. So you got a general, what we call a 30,000 foot view here of the city, and you've got various stages that are all represented in different icons and different colors of marijuana facilities. What I wanted to do first is just kind of point out all the different icons and features that you're looking at and tools you have available on this map.
Jill missed your question. Does this show where Chugach marijuana facilities fit? That right there.
It does. It definitely does.
There, look at them all.
I don't like to forget our people who are out there.
Yeah, it will.
Zero.
It is just defaulted to center over the bowl, just to kind of keep it a little more simple and give people an anchor point. But all the features on the upper left-hand side, of course, you gotta zoom in and zoom out.
Equity, would you show us Girdwood as well?
Oh, perfect.
There should be one in Bird, right? There it is.
Yep, we got one bird, one in green.
Thank you.
And Forest Fair coming up.
It's gonna be a busy week.
Then the map just turns into a big green plume.
Yep.
It's always been the integration down there.
Yeah, say you're zoomed in on something, and rather than zooming out or trying to center yourself again, you can just hit this home button, and it'll shoot you right back to your anchor point. This My Location, you click on it and you allow Google to say where you are, and it'll pinpoint the location.
When does the license go on to this map? Once Assembly approves it, or on application?
So the first time that a point gets entered onto this map is there's a state regulation that says that as soon as you initiate a marijuana application in the state, you have to notify the local governing body. So the applicant gives us a public notice that they've initiated an application to the state, that gets forwarded to me. I enter that information and put a point on there, and then update that as it moves through our process.
Could you do me a favor and send them what you gave us to the Federation of Community Councils? So when they meet, they can give it to each of the community councils. That way they can check it themselves.
Sure.
See what they get.
Sure, absolutely.
Ryan, could you zoom in on the map here?
Which location?
Mountain View. Trying to see where the place we toured, where they, so city so they're approved for manufacture. Yeah, okay. Conditional for cultivation. Got it.
So, Ryan, did you come up with a way of demonstrating those applications that are going never to be approved? Right? Kind of a way to discern.
That's something I have to clarify with the state. I'm working towards getting a list from them for applicants that have withdrawn or been inactive for such a period of time. Because there are a lot of dots on this map where an applicant has applied, say, a year and a half ago, but it hasn't gone anywhere since. And there also are those duplicates where one business wanted to move into a spot, didn't work out for them, but somebody else came along for a different business name and is now pursuing licensing business.
So is there a time limit on the licensing process? If there's no active use on a movement on the thing for a year or...
So the only time that a timeline void this application. And then it comes up as voided. I don't know how that's going to correspond with your list. And then we also heard that they're not going to update the list. That spreadsheet that you get online, they're not going to keep doing that. So I am going to go through the list, like I promised you, and cross out the ones that I know aren't going to be going anywhere.
So that brings up a question to this body. Is there anything this body can do to tackle that question? Because it seems like that is an important data point for community members to be confident of what reality is.
Right. Well, and just to have access to the information. I mean, there's no other way to search licenses other than that list that they put out. And it's not going to take it out. And it's like, it's not like public.
But Amanda, you have a list because you're notified, right, every time someone applies.
I have all of the notices of intent to apply. So anytime an applicant sends notice to the state or starts an application, they will send us the one sheet notification saying they've initiated an application with the state. So I have all of those, but until I get a notice of a deemed complete application from the state, those I do have a stack that are kind of in limbo. So similar, I have them, but I don't know where they're at other than they initiated with the state.
She wouldn't get something that says, hey, I'm taking a mental break, I'm not gonna do it for a year or two. She wouldn't get that.
Well, the logical answer seems to be a conclusion point. No activity until set time past application date means we are going to deem you not an application anymore.
Well, how that would work is if it's at the state level, then you're kind of telling the state you have to be done in X amount of time, and that's not their rule though.
Yes and no, we have the local licensing rules, and so if there's no movement, like they can easily submit a form that says we are still pursuing this, right, to keep it active every 6 months or whatever the time frame might be, once a year. That way we at least have a screen of some kind.
Why do we care?
I have somebody who's agitating in the downtown who said, we have 17 applications, 3 on one block, 3 in one, and they're creating all this hysteria, when 2 out of those 3 aren't real because they filed a form, but then they quit, and then someone else came along and filed a form and quit. Finally, the third applicant is making progress.
On the same location?
Within one, it's like exactly one address or the right next door address because it's conforming use. And so we get this bad data, and over time what's going to happen is you're going to see a map that's littered with green dots of proposed sites, and neighbors are going to be freaking out. And it seems like there should be some mechanism to clean up those false starts, or those we dropped the ball. We found out we were within 500 feet of a protected use. All of those various functions.
I'm just curious if perhaps we could roll this type of process in when we do renewals. If maybe we could roll that cleaning up the map, because I do think it's important, not only just for downtown but for other areas where they're starting to wonder. We have all these dots in our part of town. What's going on here? So it's easier for the community councils to interpolate what's really going on.
With the renewals, do you send something out? Would it be hard to just add on any, if you have these notices that they've applied to the state, send another 20 or 30 postcards and say, are you still active or not? Let us know.
We could. So currently what gets sent out is a notice of renewal only to establishments that have actually been issued their license and permit and are operating. So this year we only had, I think, 20 at the time. So May 1st is the deadline to send out the notice. So we only had 20 that got sent out applications. But based off of the notices that I have email addresses. So we could send out a mass email and send out a feeler and see, we received notice that you intended to apply. This was sent on this date. Are you still pursuing this? We could do something like that.
Mandy, why don't you do that?
Okay.
It would be an easy way for us to start to clean this up, because they're right. When you've got 70 businesses that say, hey, we want to do it, but only 3 come forward.
Yeah.
The perception out there is, hey, we're being inundated with them. It's not reality.
Yeah.
If you could send an email out and just see what's going on, we'd appreciate it.
So having done that, how would people know the result? So now you know, but is
Is this map is primarily so members of the public can see where these are, right? And so that would indicate that we should delete the point if we're trying not to freak people out. On the other hand, if I was a marijuana entrepreneur and I was looking for a suitable location, and I saw that there was a dot with someone who wasn't going forward anymore, but it was presumably conforming place. I guess for Janet, do people know where the places are?
No, and I wouldn't recommend, based on somebody else's research, just to take that same spot, because there's so many, there's issues I've even stumbled upon that's been well, I didn't think that would be a social service.
So you don't think that, what I'm getting at is marijuana business people or prospective marijuana business people are unlikely to use this map?
It's not that they're unlikely, I just don't think it's a good idea, and I don't think the muni wants to kind of embody that as, this is a tool that you can figure out where the good open locations are, because then you guys get enough, pitchforks.
As far as determining exactly which.
But I get what you're saying, yeah.
Are suitable. This is a great starting point. I will say there's been numerous examples where we've run into protected land uses that we didn't know were there. And mainly that is churches and your child care centers that are run out of somebody's home. Typically, we have to go to a different data source to find that information. That's not always captured on this map.
Chris? Yeah, I just think that in order for the postcards to be functional, at some time in the future, the question should be, what's the hook? Why would someone send this in? And I think that the answer is to keep your application active with the city. Is the only hook that you'll get that will actually get people to respond. Because in the end, if it's just an email, it's going to fall into a pile. It'll probably work with some active calling, hey, what are you up to? Maybe a little. But I don't think that from a records perspective, a statement of, we are or we aren't, is actually sufficient to make a conclusion, right? I think that you need a formal process at some point. I'm not recommending we get into that today, but it just seems like we're going to need that at some point.
This is kind of sort of useful stuff, but not critical, so I'd almost rather just give it a shot and see what the response is.
And I can check with the state too and see if they have a list of stuff similar. It's from them and go through what they have and double check against ours.
Yeah, their spreadsheet has new, initiated, voided, tabled, completed, under review, delegated, active. But again, that list is allegedly not going to be continuing to be available.
Why is that?
Because they lost their receptionist, and so they told one of my staff who used to work for the control board, and now, so she just, asked them, and they said because they lost that girl that was working the front desk, they just don't think they have the resources to keep the. But maybe if you guys voice to Erica how much that's helpful. I know it's helpful to me, how it's helpful to anybody else, and you guys, you might consider to keep it.
Well, they do it for the liquor licenses also, which is really helpful.
Yeah, the whole thing is, it's just where people go to find contact information. So.
And they post this, so they keep this spreadsheet, it's posted online, you can go.
Yeah, every 6 days or so they update it, so.
Well, I guess what I'd say is give it a shot, let us know if it takes a huge amount of time. This is takes you a day to do this, we want to make it, and then see what kind of response you get, just report that.
We'll just do a form email and then just cut and paste email addresses. They won't do very long.
Phil?
Mr. Chair, I use this list a lot, for Chugach to stay on top of it, and I tell my colleagues, and I'm just tracking the cultivation applications, because those are the facilities that use all the electricity. And we've got 49 cultivation facility license applications somewhere in the queue within the Chugach service territory. That's as many as Denver had if they all proceeded in 2014. I don't think we're going to have, that's 1/7 the number Denver had, which would be my calculation for the entire municipality bank, which I don't think that's a realistic number. And I've passed on to Erica an email, be nice if this list were pulled. And I guess my suggestion, and she said, yeah, I agree, we just don't have resources yet. But my suggestion to the assembly is whatever you do is not going to change the statement 49 applications in queue with the state. So to me, the solution really ought to be a state solution. Because whatever we do, people still go to that state list and look, and Chris's concern is going to still be out. I would suggest that the assembly send a letter to AMCO, and I would suggest that the state, because it's obviously not just Anchorage, that the state send a letter to the the assembly send a letter to the Alaska Municipal League saying, hey, we're concerned about this issue. We'd like it to be an AML issue, because I can't help but think that Fairbanks and Juneau and every other community has the same concern. And I would just, broaden your base of support for the state getting a nudge to clean up the list.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to make work for Erica, but, like her, but I wish the list was updated.
I agree. Yeah, and Alaska Marijuana Industry Association would do a letter too if you guys are gonna take a swing at it.
I'd be happy to speak to it too. I'm on the list to speak on Wednesday at the opening of the meeting as well. I'd be happy to address it on behalf of the association.
No, that'd be good. Easier is better. More accurate is better.
Mr. Chairman, I'm on the board of AML, so I could bring this up at our meeting in August. We're going to be in beautiful downtown Haines, and so that's something that we can try to get on the agenda.
Okay.
All right. Yeah, I just wanted to go over a couple more features here. Namely, you've got this nice print option. So if you zoom in on a certain area, you can print off a PDF. Essentially takes a screenshot, just turns it into a PDF for you, which will be really useful. Later on, I'll get to how to add in the assembly district layers and community council layers. You can take specific screenshots of those. And we do have a measurement tool here. You got the ability to measure area, which may or may not be very useful for this map, but we do also have a linear measurement tool, and you can change this. All the regulations take feet, and you can just go on one point, click to another, you can do a pathway. When we're doing preliminary measurements on separation distance, we'll reference this map. If things are within, say, 1,000 feet, then we'll go out and we'll do a physical measurement a little bit, as well as drive around in the neighborhood. And you do have a share option too. I'm not exactly sure why they included this in this. I think it's just a standard option in ArcGIS online maps. But if you wanted to share your map with friends on Facebook, you can go ahead and do that. If you need to search for a specific address or a specific applicant, you can do that by name. So like True North. Type in True North and it'll take you right to True North Cannabis. Or if you need to search for a specific address, you can do that as well. And then in the upper right hand corner, you got your legend that'll tell you your symbology for all of your different data points, as well as all of your protected land uses down here. So this is, you click on your layers icon right here, and this is where you can turn on parcels. So when you're doing your 200-foot lot line to lot line for as the crow flies, or your 500-foot from lot line to child cares and schools, child care centers and schools, you can go ahead and do that. It does slow the map down quite a bit because there are so many parcels and it is such a large data set. So that's why we defaulted to having that off when you turn the map on. You can also turn on your community councils. And you got your assembly districts on here too.
Is it possible to add a business improvement district layer to the council district? Or is that?
We could, as long as that data set exists. If it's there, that's something we could put on there. That may be probably more appropriate to just do as a specialized mapping task periodically. mainly it goes back to religious assemblies and the like at-home child care centers are not all accounted for on here. So we always tell the applicants this is everything we're aware of as of today, but there may be others out there. We have gotten phone calls from people that say, hey, I was made aware of this, I'm a church and I'm within that 500 feet. How are they allowed to go forward? And we said, well, you know, kind of on the map right now, we weren't aware of that.
Would you add that church at that point?
Yes, every time that I'm made aware of a new protected land use, I forward that address onto our GIS department and they go ahead and put that on the map.
So, but like, what is a church? Like, I know, I mean, I've asked Ryan this question before, and legal has not given me an answer, but like, you know, you have a nonprofit that's been voluntarily dissolved 3 times, and their legal address is a house. I mean, what's a church? And there's no sign, there's no, you know, anything, or there's no way to even have notice of it other than, you know, me and my buddies come here and we get together for a religious assembly and that passes the test. I mean, does that pass the test? I mean, that's why you don't want church in the whole thing, but that's a whole other discussion. But, you know, we just have to know what's a church. We're making serious business choices, you know, buying buildings and all these different things, and we can't even get a straight answer on what's a church. What's a
Sounds
church?
like a potential tax dodge to me.
It does, doesn't it? And so
Yeah.
it's like, you stop economic development because of that.
Or the other side that I have seen is there are church groups who are setting up churches in places they see applications, and they say, we have a church here, and try to scuttle them because they're.
And that used to
it's
happen a lot.
downtown. Yeah.
In Arizona, that used to happen a lot. My old firm, you know, would get, you know, approached by anti-cannabis groups to do that kind of stuff, to set up a church, or set up a daycare, or set up a Bible study. And it's just kind of like, to zone out whole areas. And so I guess my question just is, you know, and I understand legal's not really going to give me an answer on this, but it would be nice if they would, because if you want us to stay away from something, you should at least be able to articulate what it is. And if you can't, then maybe you need to rethink that sooner.
No, Mike, but there's what's RLIPA or something like that? I mean, there's for religious use, land use. I remember
And I
planning
looked-
commission, there were, churches had special protections. They could go into neighborhoods and your land use code couldn't, is there a definition of religious use in federal code?
The only definition that we regulate, the definition that's in Title 21. That's the definition of a religious assembly. That is the only thing in those new specific standards that the planning department has any say in. But say it was an older religious assembly that doesn't necessarily meet all the specific standards of Title 21. They're not conforming. But when it comes into the definition of, you know, how often you meet, what type of religion you are, I mean, the planning department's not going to touch those questions because it's completely inappropriate for us to do so, to say one religion is more legitimate than another. One form of practice is recognizable, another isn't. That would be up to the assembly.
And what if you had a progressive religious group that was encouraging the store to open up a block away or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't be able to. We wouldn't be
Right.
able to go there
Right.
because that's not what your code allows for. So, I mean, it's the question that I've been wrestling with some of my groups because, you know, the situation, just as I specified, it's not on the muni map. It's been revoked 3 times by the state of Alaska. Its previous address was a house. It's got the same directors, just shifting positions. And again, they don't even exist now because it's been dissolved. And so the question is, you know, is it a church? We have to get into like factual analysis that I'm not sure you guys want to get into. Because there was another city in Alaska, not to belabor the point, that their planning department did do a map like this and they identified the churches. Well, they only identified Christian churches and identify other churches. So, you know, anyway, so there's just, I could get on a whole monologue on this, but
It could be a long meeting.
yeah.
You could get into the weeds pretty deep in a hurry there.
Lots of people.
No.
All right. Another believe this feeds off of Google aerial imagery. You can't get imagery with labels, OpenStreetMap. Even do a topo if you want to see what the elevation changes between points. And then here's the disclaimer for the protected land uses. This map should not be used to make locational or investment decisions regarding where to establish marijuana facilities. Some protected uses may have been inadvertently omitted or established after the date of this map. So I try and keep this map up to date as I can, but of course there always are those things that end up getting missed, unfortunately. But when they do get missed, I do make sure that I update as quickly as possible. Alright, so then the newest feature that we put on here is the ability to actually export data sets out of this map. Previously you couldn't do that, you were just having to click on things to gather your own information. But it's a little hard to see, but there's this up arrow right at the bottom of the page. Click that and that's going to expand this table. And it always defaults to filter by map extent. If you just click on that, you'll uncheck it, and that will give you the entire data set for the whole municipality. So to actually export data from here, you're just going to click in the upper left-hand corner of this table under Options, and scroll down to Export All to CSV. And you're going to click OK. And then we'll download this spreadsheet. Open that up, and it'll open it up in Excel. And then here's where you've got everything. It's a little compressed right now because it squishes all the columns together. But here you can sort by community council, you can sort by assembly district, you can sort by approval dates, license type. I mean, all different ways that you can play around with this data to represent exactly what you're looking for. So the presentation that I gave to the assembly like 2 months ago, I believe, where I had all of the applicants and their status by assembly district, community council, and was all taken from this exact same data set.
Is there a column that shows operating, that they're actually operating, actively operating right now?
Yes. That would be the status.
All right.
So, yeah, approved to operate is the final green dot that they get. Just to say that they're approved to operate doesn't necessarily mean that they are operating, but they have final approval to open up their doors whenever they are able to do so.
Thank you.
Bill?
Ryan, did I miss it? Before you export it to the file, can you choose just a particular type of license to export? So in other words, the cultivation facilities only?
It'll spit out the whole data set.
It exports everything, and then you have to go through and cull.
Yeah, then you have to go and sort it and kind of discard what you need more.
And just for the recording, I think I should say Dick Traney and Forrest Dunbar left at about 9:45.
Yeah, but as far as how the map goes and the little handout that I have for you, that was the last step, was just exporting the data. So I guess for now, if you have any questions, we tried to make the map as user-friendly as we could, and keep it as simple as possible. For somebody, I mean, I work in mapping programs frequently, so for somebody who doesn't work in these types of programs, it can be a little confusing. So if you do have any questions on this, feel free to always reach out to me. I'll be available.
Well, thanks for doing that. That's, I think, going to be pretty useful.
Yeah, and I'm a very visual learner, and I always like to look at things on a map. And if you say, oh, we have 90 some proposed facilities, but you don't know where they are, you just look at this map and say, well, this is the one. It's a pretty useful tool.
It's incredible. Okay, well, thanks. One little thing off the agenda, you would, I'd ask Mandy, just, I guess, for my education, really, okay, we're going to regulate this licenses, we do limit them to a certain number. And I consistently vague on this. I guess I just have a bad retention of what the rules are, but is this the number that we're allowed to have, period? Or
This
what's the
is
rule?
what is current with the state with the licenses. So similarly, they do an online list of all of the liquor licenses in Alaska. So I sorted it only with the ones in the MOA, and then I color coded it based off of their expiration date. But I emailed it to everyone also. So similarly, you can do the sorting and kind of find out whatever information you're looking for. But I did kind of sort it and did a count of how many of each type there are. They used to have the community council as one of the columns on here, and they don't anymore. So that's something that I'm adding on because I have to send that out to community councils. But generally, the ones that have the limits are the beverage dispensaries. Those have been met a while ago, so the ones that are available are the ones that people will be selling.
That's a bar.
The beverage dispensaries are the full bars. They're allowed to have liquor and beer and wine.
And the limit is a state of Alaska limit. And do they limit by area as well, or just Anchorage?
It's by population.
But it's, so X amount for Anchorage, it doesn't say X amount in downtown, X amount, it's just within Anchorage, it could all be downtown.
Yeah, and the state doesn't limit stuff based off of zoning. They allow the municipalities or boroughs to do that. So similarly, liquor licenses are required to have a special land use permit. And so they apply to the municipality planning department for a special land use permit for alcohol. And there's two types. There's previously in old Title 21, there was an administrative site plan review, which was the beer and wine licenses or the restaurant eating place licenses, which were an administrative review process, and the planning department, the director, would review those and approve those. The conditional use permits were the full review process, and that's the beverage dispensaries, the ones that serve liquor, package stores, all that, and those go before the assembly for approval.
Quick question, Doug.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, you said that's under the old Title 21, and now the new Title 21, everything's been reclassified as a special land use permit. Does that still possess the same land right, once granted, always in existence, unless removed for cause on the land?
Yeah, there's a few different ones that Brian might be able to speak better to, but I know it's the length of that inactivity
6
can
months or
cause
something.
it to go away, and then if the municipality revokes it, it'll be taken away for any kind of activities or just cause.
And that special land use permit then is done by the Planning and Zoning Commission?
So it was just renamed. The ASPR and the CUP were just kind of renamed into a special land use permit for alcohol. There are still the two separate review processes. So there's still the planning department and the assembly.
Okay. But no, I just wanted to, it's helpful actually for me, because I didn't remember.
And it's definitely changed.
But there are, I mean, there's a precedent to say we're supposed to regulate this like alcohol. There is a precedent for limiting the number.
Well, that's up to the
It's not
state. Yeah, that's the
precedent.
state's
It's not-
decision. And they made the same decision that the muni did, that it's better to let the market regulate itself at this time than to try to create a secondary or tertiary market for these licenses. It's essentially, in my opinion, created a mafia scenario for those liquor licenses, and it was very wise not to allow that.
Do you know of any rumblings at the state level to limit the number of permits or licenses?
Honestly, I thought that they were going to do it because there was a brand new population chart that was done for alcohol right around the time that they were drafting the rules, or starting to draft the rules, and so thought they were going to follow Nevada's merit-based
we're supposed to be collecting taxes from these outlets when they become open for business. And if we're not tracking them more closely, someone might actually get open for business and try to slip by without paying his taxes. Has anyone thought about how to sort of make sure that doesn't happen?
5% tax, 5%.
I know, I mean, it doesn't sound like much, but if you're pretty busy, it would add up in a hurry.
I know we're required every month to pay our Anchorage tax return every month. We can't do it quarterly, we asked. Every month.
So I wonder if there's some kind of a auditing process that's been established correlating to the state taxation to the local taxation timelines or volumes or whatever.
Well, the Bureau of Revenue department could audit a retail store, and the state could audit the excise tax, which is only on the cultivator. But we also have to pay a bond to the city too to get open for taxes. So if we don't, is it 5,000 or 10,000? I forget. I think it's 5. Yes, if we don't pay, then there's that. But 5,000. I mean, most of these people have paid. Like I was just looking at one of my clients for the last 2 months, and it's been around 60. I want to say around 60,000. I think for the 2 months combined. I think so. That 5,000 is even.
Is that bond a requirement to open? We don't see that in the conditions here. Like
It's
pay bond.
part of the sort of procedure, right? It's part of
It's what we have to file to be good with the Uni's department. I don't know how it correlates with your. I assumed it was a requirement of the marijuana license.
We know that portion of it. The testing, all of that is a different title. So it's not under 10. So that would be something that the department could probably put together.
It's a different discussion. It's definitely an economic development discussion, but definitely not a planning discussion.
Well, I think the revenue department, Dan Moore, is the guy that is, that talks about revenues coming in to the muni, which is a very, very important area right now. And he might have some ideas on that.
I'm surprised those two don't connect.
Yeah, we're communicating.
He's probably already got it set up. I just happened to think, we started getting a longer list of places approved that,
Yeah, I mean, it could very well happen. Like, Mandy and I had to deal with this issue last week where I had a client who was active in the state world and was operating as a cultivator. But the form that you guys use for inspection said you passed this inspection and we gave you your special land use license and your muni marijuana license. But the reality was they didn't. But because my guys got this form that said that you passed and you got these licenses, they've been operating, but they didn't have their muni license. And Manny didn't even know, and so I submitted a renewal muni app and she goes, we don't need this. I'm like, I hope you need that because we've been operating. And so we had to sort it out why that was the issue. And so there's just some disconnect, I think.
How could that happen?
How could that happen?
we have is failure to communicate.
What happened?
So after the inspections are done, there may still be some things that need to be accounted for before the license